Harper's Bazaar, Megan's Moment. After years of being subsumed by other people's narratives, the Duchess of Sussex is ready to author her own next chapter. Story by Caitlin Greenidge and photographs by Malik Bodian. Styling by Carlos Nazario. Published November 19th, 2025. A cluster of white tents has been set up at the La Brea Tar Pits, the active fossil dig site and natural history museum in Los Angeles, to receive a group of girls from a local STEM academy. One tent near the entrance is appointed with a handsome, worn looking wooden desk with a tarp hanging behind it that's printed with a reproduction of a nature painting. It looks like the movie version of an archaeologist's field station. The 11 and 12-year-olds in their purple and gray uniforms are unaware of who they are about to meet. It's a warm September day, and I can hear them murmuring outside the tent. A golf cart pulls up, the gravel crunching beneath its tires. Quote, "The Duchess of Sussex," end quote, someone in the scrum announces. Megan descends, dressed in wide leg trousers, a silk blouse, and a small pair of pave diamond studs by the Ukrainian brand Guzima. They were a gift from her husband, Prince Harry, picked up on a recent trip to Kiev with his Invictus Games Foundation. Megan lived just a few blocks from here as a child. She mentions that this is where she rode on the back of her mother's bike before she was allowed to ride here on her own. Everyone is ushered into the tent, where a table is set up with boxes full of dirt and bone specimens. A museum educator begins to explain what they are looking at. Megan is attuned to the girls. She asks one about her nails, another about what she's studying. When a girl mentions her love of languages, Megan lights up. Quote, "I'm learning French on Duolingo," end quote, she says proudly, adding that she just hit a 90-day streak. Megan and the girls assemble for a group photo. Some girls look straight at the camera, while a few squint or stare off to the side, an attempt maybe to stave off self-consciousness. This is a time for many girls when they become aware of being seen, sometimes benevolently, more often not. Megan, 44, stands in the middle of the group. She lives a life accompanied by a level of scrutiny that every tween girl imagines is always present. Except for Megan, it is very real. Quote, "I don't know how any woman could see a young girl and not see herself in her, especially at that age," end quote, Megan tells me later. When Megan became engaged to Prince Harry in 2017, it triggered a tectonic shift in the culture. Already an actress on the popular cable drama Suits and the purveyor of an aspirational lifestyle brand, The Tig, Megan shot to global superstardom and became the subject of an intense public fascination made up of equal parts adoration and vitriol. The contrast in Meghan and Harry's backgrounds: she was American and he was British. She was a working actress from a modest family and he was a royal. She was biracial and he was a symbol for an imaginary monoracial Britain. Scrambled multiple narratives. Depending on your perspective, their union symbolized the triumph of liberal post-racial meritocracy or the downfall of traditional conservative values. In 2020, when the couple announced their intention to quote unquote step back from royal duties and move to California, the tabloids dubbed it quote unquote Mexit. It was a cultural inflection point. Was this a refutation of generational trauma or millennials being afraid of hard work? In all of those stories, though, Megan lost her agency and her humanity. Quote, "Megan understands her voice better than you, better than any producer could put it out there," end quote, says Terry Wood, former executive vice president at Harpo Productions, Oprah Winfrey's production company. Wood executive produced the explosive 2021 Oprah interview with Meghan and Harry after they stepped back from the royal family. Its airing triggered an aftershock, and worked with Meghan on the production of her podcast Archetypes. Quote, "She knows how she comes across, and she knows how she wants to connect. She understands that so much has been written about her that when she does something, She wants to break through that noise so people see that she is authentically trying to be herself. End quote. Megan has acquired a level of fame that is irrevocable. The question becomes, what does one woman do with that amount of power and tricky sort of influence? In the 5 years since leaving the firm, what some members of the royal family call the institution that dictates their lives, Meghan has remained focused on the projects she has built for herself and that fit her lifestyle as a mother of young children, Prince Archie 6 and Princess Lilibet 4. Together with Prince Harry, she launched the nonprofit Archwell Foundation in 2020 with the mission to, quote, show up, do good, end quote. She has signed development deals with Spotify and Netflix. Her lifestyle series, With Love Megan, in which she invites friends to a Nancy Myers esque California home to cook, craft, and garden with her, coincided with the launch of her brand, As Ever, which sells scented candles, preserves, flower sprinkles, and wine. After years of others attempting to fit her into their narratives, she is now pursuing a life and career that feel authentic to her and her alone, and allowing herself to enjoy it too. The appearance at the La Brea Tar Pits has wrapped, and now it's lunchtime at the Polo Lounge at the Beverly Hills Hotel. I followed Megan underneath the iconic green and white striped awning of the entryway and through the cream carpeted lobby and outdoors onto the patio, where a live piano player's notes accompany our procession. Long the see and be seen spot for Hollywood deal making and politicking, it is a calculated choice as the site for my first interview with Megan. We are ushered to a circular table in the corner of the garden, a prime seat where we can see the other diners and they can see the three of us. The Sussex's chief communications officer sits between us. We order a burger and fries for the table, and Megan orders the Polo Power Bowl. When it arrives, she holds up the dish, taking genuine delight in the perfectly arranged produce aligned to make a rainbow. During our conversation, Megan pauses to chat with the restaurateur, Michael Chow. She says his restaurant catered a recent birthday for Prince Harry, or H, as she always refers to him, and has a whispered conference with a famous film titan. How do powerful women flex? Do they lead with difference or dominance? Megan seems to lead with affability. The warmth with which she greets each of these men, and with which they reciprocate, is genuine. With me, her interviewer, where the power balance shifts back and forth, she is warm and open, and she always maintains direct eye contact. It's a skill she's honed since childhood. Quote, I was such a little nerd, end quote, she says. Quote, my entire identity was wrapped up in being the smart one. There used to be this show, I'm dating myself, but do you remember Studs? End quote. This is where I am reminded that Megan, like me, is an elder millennial, born in 1981. We are a maligned bunch, hated by our elders for our generational insistence on authenticity and social justice, derided by those younger for our earnest belief that the world is capable of change, what Gen Z has labeled quote unquote cringe. Studs is an elder millennial touchpoint, a dating game show that aired on Fox in the early 90s. I distinctly remember my mom and her friends hating it because of how often the contestants used the word buns. Quote, after school, kids would enact a little makeshift version of Studs to play. They were like, quote, well, Megan can be the host, end quote, she says. Quote, I had the personality type of I can help coordinate, I can help organize, and I can facilitate. I think I'm probably the same now, end quote. She brings up the girls at the tar pits and their vulnerability, which she clearly empathizes with. It makes sense. Some of those girls are the same age, 11, as Megan was when she graduated from Hollywood Little Red Schoolhouse. It's the age she was when she wrote a letter to Procter and Gamble to protest gender stereotypes in the company's advertising. It was also around the time of the 1992 LA uprising. When I ask her about that time now, she says, quote, it was cinematic in a way I don't think many people can understand. It was so visual, smoke everywhere. People were driving around with the back of their SUVs open. I saw people running with boxes of diapers, smashed windows, so much fire and ash falling from the sky that it felt like snow. End quote. As we sit at the Polo Lounge, the city is currently at the center of a national fight over the enforcement of this administration's immigration policy and the continued deployment of the National Guard to urban areas. But the city, Megan says many times over the course of our conversation, is quote unquote resilient. Quote, it was scary, but LA survived it, end quote. For Megan, the trajectory of her life has come full circle. The Sussexes moved to California in 2020, settling in Montecito, a secluded, wealthy enclave of celebrity entrepreneurs like Oprah Winfrey and Gwyneth Paltrow. There, Megan reconnected with a tight knit circle of women, including Kelly Zyphon, who met Megan when they were both in their 20s. Quote, it is a small group of us that protect each other, end quote, Zyphon says. They had fallen out of touch, but Megan reached out in 2022 after she found out that Zyphon's 9-year-old son had passed away from COVID 19 and viral meningitis. Quote, the second I heard her voice, it felt like I was right back with her, end quote, Zyphon says. Zyphon is on the board of the Alliance for Children's Rights, a nonprofit that provides support for children and teens in California's foster care system, and that Megan and Harry, through their Archwell Foundation, have supported. Quote, there's not a day that goes by that she hasn't checked in or I haven't checked in, end quote, Zyphon says. Quote, someone can show up in a time of need or grief, and oftentimes they don't stay, or they're only here for a short amount of time. But Megan just always made herself available to all of us. End quote. Megan is of a generation of women who were taught to seek self actualization through work. This same group of millennial women experienced a radical shift once work was disrupted by the 2020 pandemic. I asked her, despite her extraordinary circumstances, if she has experienced any of that same upending shift. Quote, I like the community of work and the connection, end quote, Megan says. Quote, I think a lot of it is in my DNA, end quote. It's an attitude in contrast with the current trend of valorizing a soft life, that is, a life without work outside the home, and with an emphasis on ease, which requires its own level of hidden labor. Quote, you should do what works for you, end quote, Megan says diplomatically. For her, though, quote, when people start to see your work ethic and really understand how dedicated you are to things, how you are in one place, I believe is how you are in other places. So for me, that's how I show up when I do potlucks at my kids' schools. That's how I show up when putting a party together for my friend who just had a baby. That's how I show up in business, end quote. Fear of failure often runs in tandem with the millennial desire to achieve, best illustrated in the specter of the girl boss. When I broach the topic and ask Megan what she's learned from her mistakes, she deadpans, quote, you learn not to do it again, end quote, before clarifying, quote, if it all goes swimmingly, you don't learn from it. If you don't learn anything, you're not going to grow, end quote. She continues, quote, I'm a mom with kids at that age where they are constantly learning something new. I watch them face things that feel completely insurmountable every day. But you can remember and say, I know it seems really hard right now, but trust me, that's going to come so easily soon. I can give myself the same grace as a founder. There's no such thing as perfect. I too get to make mistakes. End quote. Quote, there's also not a lot of fun in trying to be perfect, end quote, Megan says. Quote, so why try to do that if you want to have fun? End quote. And by her good friend Serena Williams' account, Megan does. Quote, we love a good mimosa, end quote, Williams says. Quote, we could talk for 100 hours and it feels like 10 minutes go by, and it's like we never stop smiling, end quote. Zyphon tells me, quote, she's funny. I think maybe that's surprising to people, end quote. Williams, who met Megan over a decade ago at a Super Bowl party, says, quote, we both definitely have a dry sense of humor. I think that's why we hit it off for no reason at this silly football thing. We were just like, why are we here? To meet you? Apparently, and we've been lifelong friends ever since, end quote. Quote, I don't like things that feel overly realized, end quote, Megan says. Quote, if you overwork the dough, it's not going to rise. And sometimes I think the stress that people put on moments They are so consumed in them that you lose the fun of why you are doing something, end quote. Quote, not everyone who starts a business is under the microscope that she's under, end quote, Terry Wood says. Quote, what she is learning to weather and ride out is the judgment that happens as a businesswoman when you are that famous, end quote. A waiter comes to clear the table, but Megan asks him to leave the fries behind. I ask her if she ever feels the need to compartmentalize the parts of her life, work and family. Quote, my office is right by the kitchen, and I love that I can work from home, end quote, she says. Quote, it's a great luxury, end quote. Her daughter, Lilibet, quote, comes and sits on my lap when I'm in the middle of the meeting, whether it's about P&L for my brand or it's about something creative, end quote. When I ask Megan what she hopes her kids see when they see her working, she tells me, quote, I hope they see the value of being brave. They saw it when the jam was just a pot on the stove bubbling. When you're young, I think you are a little bit more fearless. As we get older, we lose some of that, end quote. Our allotted time at the table is coming to a close. The last of the meal is whisked away, and a waiter comes by with an unsolicited cappuccino. In the foam on top, the restaurant has printed a photorealistic image of Megan. Quote, oh, end quote, she says, smiling down at it. Quote, I recognize this picture. That's from our trip to South Africa, end quote. Prince Harry and Meghan toured the country in 2019. It's a lovely and absurd perk of celebrity, and Meghan is tickled enough to take a photo of it. When I meet up with Megan a week later on a stormy day in New York, she's wearing black leggings and an oversized Northwestern sweatshirt, her alma mater. Her hair is pulled back, and if she has any makeup on, it's difficult to tell. Her skin is bare, and some of her freckles are visible. She looks like she could still be in college. We're in a grand brownstone on the Upper East Side that belongs to one of Megan's friends. When I enter, the house manager announces, quote, Megan, Duchess of Sussex, end quote, even though we appear to be the only other two people in the house. Meghan and Harry are in New York to receive the Humanitarians of the Year award from Project Healthy Minds, a nonprofit focused on mental health. We try to decide where we will have our talk, downstairs in the kitchen with its oak countertops and view of the patio, or upstairs. She gestures toward the second floor of the house, which is accessed via a glass elevator in the living room. In the weeks since we last met, Megan caused a sensation when she made a surprise appearance at the Balenciaga show during Paris Fashion Week. The first with Pier Paolo Piccioli at the helm. The two have known each other for years. Quote, I was excited for him, end quote, she says. Quote, I reached out and I said, happy to come and support you. We kept it secret and it was really fun, end quote. There's that word again. Quote, I love being able to do both, end quote, Megan says. Quote, to play in the sandbox with my kids and to play in the front row at a show. I think the moment that you start making all of your personal decisions based on external judgment, then you lose your authenticity, end quote. I point out that when women in the public eye are multidimensional, tend to get a lot of flack. Why do you think that is? Megan asks me. Here, I launch into a tangent about our culture's deep and historical distrust of women's voices in public. Quote, you know what I mean? End quote, I finally say. Megan deadpans again. Quote, well, yeah. End quote. I tell her it sounds like she has good boundaries. Quote, I think my boundaries became stronger once I came into the public eye in this very, end quote. She pauses and makes a face similar to the one she made when talking about making mistakes and laughs. Quote, I could think of any adjective to fill the blank and it would probably work. You find different ways to protect yourself, whether that's self preservation or it's just growing up. End quote. Her circle of trust is tight. She puts her hand on her heart when she talks about her husband. Quote, he loves me so boldly, fully, and he also has a different perspective because he sees media that I wouldn't. End quote, she says. Quote, no one in the world loves me more than him, so I know he's always going to make sure that he has my back, end quote. With Harry, Megan explains, quote, you have someone who just has this childlike wonder and playfulness. I was so drawn to that, and he brought that out in me. That's translated into every part of our life, even in business. I want us to play and have fun and explore and be creative. End quote. Megan also credits her mother, Doria Ragland, with teaching her how to play. Quote, as a child, I was very much an old soul, end quote, she says. Quote, that's been part of my wiring. My mom would say I was just born that way, end quote. Her mother, in contrast, was, quote unquote, a free spirit. They were a close duo. A travel agent during part of Megan's childhood, Raglan would use her employee discounts so they could travel to Mexico for Day of the Dead. Megan's maternal grandmother, another strong single woman, lived around the corner. It was at her grandmother's that Megan learned about food. Her mother was not a regular cook, and Megan remembers most of the food at her table being eaten in haste. Carnation instant breakfast shakes in the morning, deli sandwiches for lunch, though these were often an attempt to deliver on Megan's request to have a Subway sandwich like she'd seen in the commercials. Her grandmother, whose family came from Tennessee, had a garden where Megan helped pick greens and make preserves. As she describes it, it was a childhood with close ties, though she says her parenting style is quote unquote very different from her mother's. She has made it a study using books and apps, a diligence that has made her an authority within her friend circle. Quote, she's just so smart, and I feel like no matter what, I can always learn from her, end quote, says Williams. The last time the two hung out, Megan, quote, was talking about this amazing woman who is really helpful and how to talk to kids. I'm implementing so much that she's teaching me, end quote. But when Megan was growing up, her understanding of how to be a mother and a girl came from the media as much as it did from the women around her. She spoke of wanting to be a mother because of the capable sitcom moms she watched on TGIF shows and because of loving Archie comics. Quote, everyone was like, do you want to be a Betty or a Veronica? End quote. Quote, which one did you want to be? End quote, I ask her. Quote, oh, Betty, of course, end quote, she says laughing. Quote, she was so nice, end quote. The LA of Megan's childhood, diverse working class neighborhoods, and Erewhon, quote, before it was cool, end quote, is gone now. It's been changed by time, but also was decimated by fire last winter. Pasadena and Altadena, two of the communities hardest hit, were places she spent a lot of time during her adolescence. Quote, I saw homes where I used to have sleepovers reduced to ash, end quote. Megan and Harry were both spotted in the aftermath, volunteering with Chef Jose Andres and his World Central Kitchen nonprofit. Quote, it was less about just giving someone a handout, but giving it to them with dignity, end quote, she says. Quote, can you treat it with the same level of care that you would if you had lost everything, end quote. It's nearly time for me to go. Megan tells me that she'll be having lunch soon with Gloria Steinem, or Glo as she calls her. They met during the pandemic. A mutual acquaintance was in their shared pod. Steinem came to Thanksgiving at Megan's house. Quote, I've just always admired her, end quote, she says. Megan is remarkably at ease with the surrealism of global celebrity. In fact, she seems to enjoy it. The house is quiet, the streets outside are too, because of the storm. When I walk to the door, I turn and can see Megan turn back to the kitchen, illuminated by the green light of the rain soaked garden, ready to move on to the next thing.